everybody, and welcome to a special holiday edition of Boobies and Newbies, the podcast that asks novice romance readers to think outside the dick in a box and brave the unbridled world of erotica. I'm your host, Kelly Reynolds, and today's romance review marks the 12th and final episode in Boobies and Newbies' annual holiday special, The 12 Days of Boobsmas. Our 5th annual 12 Days of Boobsmas has officially come to a close, and boy, oh boy, has it been a blast. All month long, we've celebrated the wonderful world of holiday romance books, from Hanukkah hookups with your billionaire boss to an earthbound alien for Christmas, all while sharing a few of our favorites along the way with a few lucky readers. It's been an absolute joy, and I thank all of you for listening and playing along with the Boobsmas festivities. And following the 12 Days of Boobsmas, Boobies and Newbies will be taking a short winter hiatus, but never fear, because we will return in early 2023 with more reviews, more interviews, and a few new things in the works. In the meantime, you can always catch up on past episodes, including the 12 Days of Boobsmas Past, by listening on your favorite podcast app or on our website, boobiesandnewbies.com. The best way to keep up with the podcast and find out what's coming up next is to follow us on social media at Boobies Podcast across all the channels, except on TikTok, where you will find me at Real Kelly Ray. Also, I know it's a little bit late in the holiday festivities, but I'm going to take one last chance to shamelessly plug my holiday novella, Meet Me in Los Feliz. It's not too late to grab yourself or the romance reader in your life a copy, although it might arrive after Christmas depending on how fast your shipping is. Last but not least, if you feel like spreading a little extra Boobsmas merriment, you might consider leaving this podcast a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and or supporting us on Patreon. You will find links to all of the above in today's show notes. And now, on to our final Boobsmas read of the season. Joining me today are two of my favorite podcasters, co-hosts of the Categorically Romance Podcast. It's Aaron and Bree.
We're here.
Hello, Kelly. Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome back to you both, because I was thinking about it, and I think I've had both of you on, but I've never had both of you on together.
Yeah. Thank you for having
this is
us.
true.
We've made it. We've made it.
That's how you know you've made it in the world, Mama, is when you're on this podcast together.
You know, I like talking about dicks in boxes, so...
It's the best place to
what
keep
better
them.
time than the Christmas season?
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not rewatching the Dick in a Box sketch from SNL on repeat, what are you doing? Is it even Christmas?
Well, you know, my favorite meme, because I sent it to you like a year ago, is like the evil queen, I think from Snow White, and she's got that face. She's like, who put the dick in this box?
A true classic. A true classic. All right, my friends. Well, I, for one, am so excited to have you here. And I think you'll be proud to know that we've covered not one, but 2 category romances on the podcast during the 12 Days of Boobsmas, which I think is a record for us.
That's awesome.
But y'all discuss category romance all the time over on Categorically Romance Podcast. So why don't you tell the people all about it?
Go ahead, Aaron.
All right. Well, category romance is more a type of publishing of romance books. So if you think Harlequin, that's going to be the gold standard, I guess, of the definition of category romance, but you have publishers like Untitled and Thule that do it as well. But essentially they have categories, or I wouldn't say genres, but just certain types of romances that fit into certain lines is what they call them, and they come out every month.
In a nutshell, there you go. I think it's very impressive that they release them every month. Like that alone to me, like I'm always amazed by anybody who's publishing books, period, but to do multiple ones like in a month is just wild to me. And yet they've made quite a name for themselves, especially when you're talking about Harlequin, of doing this for so long.
Well, I just want to say to the listeners out there, because we get multiple books every month, that does not mean that the quality is any less.
Yes.
Just because we have a lot of quantity.
I was going to say, Aaron created this like brilliant, he had this brilliant idea one day to like create a Reddit thread that just asked like, if you don't read Harlequin or category romance, why not? And that was actually a response that he got, is like someone who had worked like as a bookseller were like, they were kind of turned off basically by how, you know, the fact that every month there were new titles and there were so many titles within each line. It just seemed kind of industrious to them. And I was like, that's a very legitimate, it's a very legitimate, I think, idea and a response and thought, you know, but I mean, the authors are working on these books like 18 months before we actually get them. So it's not like they wrote them 2 months ago and we're just now getting them, you know, like they are,
Right.
There's some really, really good titles that we get every month. So
yeah, it's not like there's 20 authors, you know, working in a sweatshop, you know, get these out every month. You know, we've got lots and lots of great authors working for these publishing companies. And, you know, some of them do put out a couple of books a year, sometimes 4, looking at you, Joss Wood, or
looking
more.
at you, Maisie Yates.
Ooh, 2 names that I absolutely recognize. So along with the Hanukkah romance that we've already discussed this year on the podcast, that is also a Harlequin category romance, and today's read, which we'll be talking about in a few moments, I wanted to see if there were any other Harlequin or just category in general romances fit for the holiday season that you wanted to recommend to our listeners.
Aaron, you enjoyed the Aisha one, right?
Yes, so Maybe This Christmas by Aisha Lin. It's a Thule published book. It was a really sweet holiday romance set in wintry Chicago, which is just a beautiful city to begin with, but winter setting.
I love anything set in Chicago because I lived there for 2 years. So I get so excited when not only I see like a Chicago set romance, but just a city romance like during the holidays, which is actually one of the things I did like about the book that we're going to talk about today. But yeah, big city romances for the holidays.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah,
give me
love that.
more.
One that we read together was the original title is A Christmas Rendezvous by Karen Booth, but it's since been re-released as an ebook from Harlequin as, is it A Christmas Negotiation or The Christmas Negotiation?
Yes.
Yes.
A Christmas Negotiation. Yeah.
So yeah, you can only get it on ebook, but guys, this book, it was so good. I was so happy to see her get that book re-released, because I mean, we were reading it, we were confused because we saw this new like illustrated cover, new title. We were like, wait, is this 2 different books? And she's like, no guys, it's being re-released. We were so happy for her. So that book was fantastic. Of course, before we hit record, we were talking A Valentine for Christmas by Reese Ryan. It's Reese Ryan. I feel like that's kind of just enough said.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, category author, but like this book in particular wasn't a category, but Rowan Parrish's The Holiday Trap.
Oh,
Don't be like intimidated, guys. It is kind of a lengthier book, but I feel like it was one of the quickest reads for me. I like just sped through that book. I just could not put it down. So
well, and we did read Rowan Parrish's The Lights on Knockbridge Lane last year for the 12 Days of Boobsmas.
Oh,
and
yes.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure that was it a special edition?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And she came out with this year. There was like I think the series is finished now, but there was a Halloween book. Like that's the way that the series was concluded, and it was fantastic. Yeah, shout out to Rowan.
Yeah, big fan of Rowan Parrish's work. So I am happy that wow, she really has covered a lot of different holidays. Then now that I'm thinking about it in her books, which is impressive. And honestly, I feel like we need more Halloween romance as well. But that's a conversation for another season of the podcast, I guess.
Yeah, I pulled it up. It's called The Rivals of Casper Road, and it is legit Halloween. Like they are prepping for a Halloween like decorating contest.
Yes.
So, yeah, Rowan knew what we needed and delivered.
I wish we got to see a lot more, like all of the effort and I don't want to say the effort, all of the ideas that go into holiday romance, like, and I feel like we see a lot of the same ones. We see some sort of competition. We see a lot of baking. We see a lot of family getting together. Like, I wish we applied a lot of the things from holiday romance to book set during other times of year. And to me, Halloween would be a great one. I think like 4th of July would be a great one. I'm also kind of wondering why there's not more like Easter romance, because also like the Easter Bunny erotica just like writes itself.
I mean, I feel the same way about New Year's. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
fireworks are kind of annoying personally, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I love the idea of New Year's and new possibilities. Where are the like sexy New Year's parties and all the gold glitter and champagne? Like, I want that.
But at home with no noise.
No, I live in a neighborhood where like literally on the 4th of July, somebody who knows blocks away shot off fireworks and my yard caught on fire. Like, I'm just like,
Oh,
no,
no.
guys. Yes.
Yeah,
I was like, thank God I'm outside.
that's a pass. That's a pass for me as well. So that's funny you should mention New Year's because that will actually come up during our round of tit or tat that we're going to play here in a second.
Okay.
First things first, I think it's important to introduce the book we're talking about today, which is Forbidden Kisses with Her Millionaire by Hannah Sheik. And this contemporary Black romance was published in November 2022, just recently. It's available on Amazon for $4.99 Kindle edition. I also received an early copy of this from the publishers via NetGalley, so thank you for that. Although I think the great thing about category romance in general is that a lot of them come at a lower price point, I think, than what we're seeing across the rest of like traditional publishing. So that is something that I do really appreciate about category romance, especially when they're pumping out so many of them all the time. That's probably what makes what makes them able to offer these at like such a great cost, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. As a frugal book person, it is very rare that I will pay $10 or more for a book. So yes, I greatly appreciate
Oh, true, Aaron.
Especially an ebook. Like, I will say there's been a couple we've done for the 12 Days of Boobsmas that, yes, are new releases, but the ebook alone costs like $13.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I think, and although like to like counteract that or whatever, like we appreciate it because we read them. But I think for people that look at category that are romance readers but don't read it, the fact that they are cheaper, I think, is another reason some people don't pick them up. But yeah, I mean, pick up these cheap books because they're really good and they're cheap.
Well, and if you think about it on the flip side, to me, I'm thinking, you know what? It's a great way. It's kind of like getting an anthology. It's a great way to be able to maybe read a new author or two that you're not familiar with. It's a great way to try out category. And there are plenty of different categories, as we know. So I think because it's at such a great price point, it kind of offers you the opportunity to give it a go without having like a major drawback, you know, because it's
Exactly.
at the end of the day, you're spending less than $5 on a book. Even the paperbacks aren't much more than that. So I think it's a great option to have, like, especially if you're kind of wondering what to read and not wanting to shell out the $13 to $14 for like a new ebook. And this gives you another option. You can read 3 of these for the price of that one.
Yeah.
Very true. Absolutely.
Well, let's play a round of tit or tat. And these are all items, places, things that all come from today's reading, Forbidden Kisses with Her Millionaire. So I will say I've been really looking forward to this book because it is the first book that we've read for Boobies and Newbies that celebrates and or mentions Kwanzaa. The only reason I say and or is I feel like it's not a major point of the book. I was kind of expecting there to be more Kwanzaa, but at the same time, it is something that, you know, we've read plenty of Christmas romance. We've read several Hanukkah romances, and this was a first to me. And I, for one, was really excited to read a romance with Kwanzaa. I would love to see more of them. So keep that in mind when you do decide to read this. I feel that I have actually learned some things from reading this book, which I personally appreciate. But we will talk about that more.
And it was cool because the heroine is from Africa. So when the hero tells her that it's a Kwanzaa-themed party, she's like, what is that? So you kind of learn that, like, it's more of a North American thing than, her coming from a different part of the world. She did not know what it was.
Which,
so I
full
thought that was pretty
transparency, I had no idea. I had
Same.
zero
Yeah.
idea that was something, because to me, I'm thinking, oh, what I know about Kwanzaa, which is very limited, but what I know about Kwanzaa, I'm like, oh, to me, this has always been sort of a celebration of African culture during the holiday season. And I know that it always is around Christmas time. And so to hear from somebody that is from Africa, who lives in Africa, that's not only is it not something that she celebrates, but she doesn't even know what it is. Like that, I had no idea.
I was like, oh, okay, it's more of an us over here thing. Got it. Yeah. I loved it.
And he's Canadian, so it's not even like an American, colonizer thing. It's, I'm sure it is to some degree, but it's definitely, I found it so fascinating, like, to not only have one character from outside North America, but to have both characters be from countries outside of the United States. I think I can count on one hand the number of romance books that I've read that have had characters who have lived outside of the United States, and characters who have lived outside of North America. It's even fewer and far between. So it was nice to, at least in my opinion, and I do talk about being a conscientious reader a lot. I think it's important to step outside of what you know and your comfort zone when you're reading things, when you're watching things, because this is how we learn. This is how we learn about other people and other places, and how their lived experiences aren't exactly our lived experiences. And it's a great tool for developing empathy. It's a great tool for, developing a better understanding, like a cultural understanding of the world that we live in. So I, for one, am thankful for that and this book alone. But we'll talk all more about this, I promise. But let's play a game first. And the first thing I'm going to ask each of you is hot tea or hot cocoa?
You go first, Aaron.
Oh, what's the context? That's
you need context, Aaron?
Well, yeah, that's a really tough decision. I mean, I really like both of them, so it's, boy.
You must pick one.
If I had to pick one for the rest of my life, it would be hot cocoa. But
Aaron's
I
that
would
person
miss
that's
my
like,
hot tea.
I want 3 more wishes, like from the genie. Like my first wish is 3 more wishes.
Oh, screw 3. I want 1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
He's going to wish for more wishes.
I want unlimited wishes. I want all the tea and cocoa.
Yeah, same hot cocoa for sure. I mean, I know there are places in the world where hot tea is just the norm, but I'm a cold green tea lemonade kind of girl, but I could live without it. Hot cocoa all the way. What's yours, Kelly? What's yours?
I would pick hot cocoa, but I do drink both. I'm not shaming Aaron for liking both of them. I like both of them too. Like I just, it's for the sake of the game, but no, if I had to choose, it would be hot cocoa.
Okay.
Yeah. Another of my 2 favorite things, because I love carbs, and that is rice or potatoes.
Ooh, I guess I'd have to go with rice, but again, I'd really miss potatoes if I had to go.
Oh gosh, I mean, brown rice, yellow rice, white rice. What's your rice of choice?
Who needs context
so much variety.
That is, I guess, a good thing about rice is you could, because I'm like potatoes all the way, like potato soup, mashed potatoes.
Yeah.
But dang, I would really miss me some fried rice. But we're going to go with potatoes. We're just going to go with potatoes.
Yeah, I appreciate all the thought you guys are putting into this, but like hands down, it's potatoes for me. Like absolutely no thought required. Like I am a potato. Like it's just like fries, mashed potatoes, tater tots, breakfast potatoes, hash browns. Like I could live on just potato. Like, honestly, my two favorite foods are potatoes and pasta. And I'm just like, I know it would be like a carb fest, but I'm okay with that.
Right. I mean, Midwest hot dishes, like they will literally use tater tots.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Literally, one of my favorite things about when I lived in Minnesota was like hot dish and just people talking about hot dish, and every souvenir you could buy would have a recipe for hot dish on it. Like, I love it. So, so good. So good. Okay, this one goes into, since our heroine in this book is an artist, and they talk about a few different like mediums of art. So photography or painting?
I'd have to go with painting, I guess, because I would really miss the Bob Ross, the Joy of Painting episodes if I had to give them up.
Oh my gosh.
I really look forward to your reasoning for all of these answers, Aaron. Like, I feel like it's just, I can't predict it, which is what I really enjoy about it. So great. Keep it up.
You're taking me by surprise, Aaron, because I'm like, you're totally like an Oregon hipster in my eyes. And I would have imagined you saying,
thanks.
I would have totally imagined you saying photography.
I don't know. I know a lot of people who live in Portland who also have Bob Ross paintings they've done themselves up as their wall art.
So maybe he is staying on brand. Okay. Oh gosh. Okay, mine is, I think I would have to say photography. I love looking at people's photos and photojournalists and stuff like that. So yeah,
I'm torn. Like, I think my initial thought is photography, but at the same time, I think about, I'm like, oh my God, remember that there was a time where like people would have to like sit for paintings like for hours, and like that's basically like all you had was like, oh, we know that they looked like this because they one time sat for this painting that took 4 days to make. And you're just like, oh my God. Like, it's just, so like imagining living in that world where like that's all you have, I'm like, that's kind of weird, but also social media would be like a thing of the past. Like, it would just be, it would be much simpler, but also I feel like less exciting for me. Or maybe it would be more exciting because you'd have to wait like for a paint. I don't know. So I'm starting to go into like Aaron reasoning here.
You need to be really talented to send a nude, without commissioning it from someone else.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? And like, what if it was a selfie? Like, are you painting yourself? Like,
right? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, right?
But Aaron, you also really love like the old painted Harlequin covers. So this is very on brand for you.
The Temptation line. Yeah, wonderful.
I like this. Okay, this next one I feel like is a lot less exciting and a lot more cheesy, but also I love it. And that is souvenir t-shirt or souvenir keychain.
Oh, t-shirt. Easy. That's makes up the majority of my wardrobe is souvenir t-shirts. So
yeah,
same.
I'm so glad I'm not alone in this, you guys.
Yeah, when you get older, you start to have like more, you get a little bit pickier when it comes to like the quality of t-shirt and like what's on the t-shirt. And yes, it costs $5, but is it going to turn into a pile of string the first time I wash it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, and then what you can do is what I've done, where when you have too many of them, you create a t-shirt quilt. I've got 2.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great
it's
idea.
great.
Quilt.
Yeah.
Great way to like relive the memories without keeping a ratty t-shirt that does not fit and hasn't fit for like 10 years. So something for people to keep in mind.
Well, and you can make good couch pillows with old t-shirts that you're decommissioning.
Yes.
It's pretty easy. You just stuff them and sew up the ends.
There you go. Okay, on to something tasty, and that is chocolate pecan pie, which I was thinking about and I don't think I've had, but they do mention chocolate pecan pie specifically in the book. So chocolate pecan pie or homemade sugar cookies.
I would go with chocolate pecan pie. Even though I've never had it, I imagine what I'm thinking is it's just pecan pie with like a drizzled chocolate sauce over the top, like a fancy chocolate sauce. We're not talking like Hershey's here or anything like.
No, we're better than Hershey's.
I'm gonna go with sugar cookies because your girl is not a pie person. So sugar
like
cookies.
no pie?
No, and honestly, I've never even tried it, but it just does not look. It just
Wait,
doesn't look like-
wait. Your girl is not a pie person, but you've never tried
No,
pie?
oh god, I just looking at like the texture of it, I'm like, no. I don't want it.
I can't with you, Bree. Like this is see, because look, it is one thing to be like, oh, I like a certain kind of like some people only like fruit pies, some people only like cream pies, but to just be like, I don't like any pie, even though I've never tried pie.
No. I can't. I think I've like had a piece and I just like I had to like no, I think it's the
What
texture.
about a quiche? Do you eat quiche?
I don't think I've never had a quiche. I don't think I've
Oh my god.
I'm not the best. I'm not the most experienced. Like you said earlier, like I am a pasta and potatoes kind of girl. Like I eat what I eat. I don't experiment that often, you guys.
What if the pie had potatoes? What if it was sweet potato pie?
No. Yeah, no.
Way to ruin potatoes, Kelly.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm out here just ruining potatoes by making them pie. God. Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like I'm going to want to talk about that with you more at a later date and try to convince you otherwise. However, I'll let it go for now. And honestly, I'm not the biggest fan of either of these, but I do love chocolate. So I think I would go chocolate pecan pie, and I haven't tried it. So I'm like, okay, I will try it, even though I haven't had it before.
If I see it out and about, just for you two and the podcast listeners, I will try it and I will send you a pic. Okay. Ugh.
Of your face being like, ugh.
I could just, oh God, I could just imagine the sogginess.
Accompanied by barfing emojis, right?
Yeah, just like thumbs up, face down. Oh no. Okay, how about, and this is in context to the fact that we go from Africa to Calgary, Canada in this book. So very different locations, very different climates. So the question is, would you rather have extreme high and low temperatures throughout the seasons, or the same temperature year round, never changes?
Oh my gosh.
Right. What temperature is the same temperature?
How did I know Aaron was going to ask this question?
Aaron.
I'll let you decide. You can decide on the temperature year round, but it never changes. You never see a change of leaves. You never see a change of, maybe in this world it doesn't rain, I guess, because like that would change it too. So it's just the same all year, unless you pick like 50 degrees and raining, which is very Oregonian of you, which I guess, could also be an option.
Well, I hate seasonal depression, so if I had to give up the seasons, I couldn't do that. So I guess I would go with the extreme hot and cold.
Now, Bree lives in Texas.
I would not want to deal with like extreme hot all the time because I already feel like I somewhat get that. But extreme hot, or I would do both of the extremes.
You would do the extremes.
Yeah, I would do the extremes.
I think I would too. And I hate hot weather. I do not like it at all. And I have lived in multiple places where it's very, very hot. And especially when you add in the humidity, it just feels like you're living inside a gym sock. It's so disgusting.
Oh, yeah.
But then,
I mean, you feel like you can never get clean.
Yeah, exactly. Like you can get out of the shower and not know if you're sweating or if it's like still the moisture like from the shower.
Right. Yeah.
Worst feeling ever. But then like winter, I've also lived in extremely cold negative temperatures, which, does get miserable and just very chilly. I don't know. I think I would honestly really prefer having seasons than I would having just the same temperature year round.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think I would lose track of like what month it is if it was the same weather all the time.
Well, that's how I feel. Yeah. Like I feel like we had like 2 weeks this year that we had a quote unquote cold front, and it was like legitimate sweater weather from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, and then it went away. And now it just feels like spring again. Like you'll get like these like 64-degree cool days, and that's like the best you're gonna get. So yeah, actual seasons would be great. It would be ideal.
Hey, come visit Portland anytime you want, Bree.
I know. I want to come to Portland.
Aaron's not far. We can all get together in person.
And go have coffee and chocolate pecan pie and, you know.
Yes. We can all force feed Bree pie.
Yes.
I would do it just for you two. Okay, I would do it.
Well, and then my final question ties into what we were talking about earlier, which is New Year's Eve. And so the big question is, New Year's Eve at home or New Year's Eve out? I'm just going to say out, and you interpret that as you will.
I would say New Year's Eve at home because I'm about to turn 40, so I really don't do out late at night anymore. Like if I'm up past 10, it's something went wrong throughout the day.
Something went wrong. At this point, I would love a New Year's out. I don't know how long. I don't know if I would make it to like the actual New Year's still being out.
You're like, we could just go out to dinner and that would be enough.
Right. I might be asleep in the car because I'm a 5 a.m. riser. But yeah, ideally, I would love just like a really fun New Year's night out for sure. I mean, I'm home all the time, so I'd love a night out.
Yeah. I got you. Well, we'll see how you feel about that like a year from now when you're like teaching full time.
I know. I'm really going to need a night out.
Yeah.
Well, that concludes our round of Tit or Tat. Thank you both so much for participating. And I think before we talk about the book, the thing I do want to ask each of you is just, do you have a favorite holiday tradition or memory?
Honestly, and it may sound really cheesy or whatever, but like my go-to movie to watch every year is the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. It's hilarious. I remember my dad, like growing up, he loved Chevy Chase, so it was always one of those films from the franchise going on. And so like the must-watch movie for me every year is that one. Like I can watch all the Hallmarks or whatever, all the Hallmarks, but like the one that I have to have on DVD in my house is that. So that's kind of like my tradition, and nobody else in my house really cares, but I'm like, whatever, I'll sit here on my couch laughing away.
It's a classic.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to say that just my favorite holiday thing is my grandmother's cornbread stuffing. So Thanksgiving, Christmas, it's always there. And it's so good. It's amazing. My grandmother's not in a condition where she can make it anymore, but my sister has perfected the recipe. And so definitely appreciate that it's still there. So that would be mine.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think food is like a great tradition and memory that a lot of people have. Like we tie so many memories to specific dishes and like the times we've had them, and even like if they weren't good, like even if it was like a dish gone bad, but I think there's a lot of memories tied to food, so love that.
How about you, Kelly?
Mine, I'm trying to think of one related to food now that I've like talked about food. When it comes to food, I will say we don't necessarily do like the same meal, especially like around Christmas, because I feel like we go to a bunch of different Christmas celebrations, so it just is kind of like a eat and go kind of thing. But I will say there's been a few New Year's now where I've been home visiting family, and if I'm home, my mom will make chocolate souffle. And the reason she makes it is because several years ago, I bought her and Dad a cooking class that was like a chocolate themed cooking class, and they made chocolate souffles. And so my favorite thing about it though is that they've never come out well. Like they're delicious, but souffle is supposed to rise. And every time my mom has made them, other than when they made them in the cooking class, they have always dropped. So you basically have like this little chocolate cake with like a big dip in the middle. And so we're like, well, that's okay. You just fill it with whipped cream and everything's fine. That's kind of become like a New Year's Eve tradition if I'm there with them. They don't have to be pretty to be good.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Well, I'm so glad to be celebrating the final day of Boobsmas with you both, and I'm going to go ahead and share the Goodreads synopsis for today's read, which once again is Forbidden Kisses with Her Millionaire, and for once, it actually is a brief-ish synopsis. So I will share that, and then we will start talking about the book, and we begin here. Will the heiress be able to resist her tempting boss? Find out in this heartwarming Kwanzaa set story by Hannah Sheik for Harlequin Romance. Can she resist him while they work together? Heiress Lin dreams of a life different from the one that's been planned for her. Traveling from Kenya to Canada to work for renowned tycoon Karl on a Kwanzaa-themed event is thrilling, and their instant off-limits attraction blows her away. By the time the 7 days of Kwanzaa arrive, even the snow outside can't cool the sparks between them, especially after their sizzling kiss. But Karl's a closed book, so will Lin dare to trust in their unique connection? Okay, first of all, can we just highlight the fact that there's a sentence that's Kenya to Canada, Karl on a Kwanzaa-themed event. I'm like, wow. That's a lot. And I can honestly say, I think no shade to the people out there named Karl, but Karl is not a name I read in a lot of romance books.
It is
I noticed
definitely
that
not.
too.
No.
Yeah.
Karl with a K, no less.
Karl with a K, yes. And I
Yeah.
think in the book he's described as bald. I could have swore he was bald, but on my cover of the paperback, he definitely has some hair. But it is what it is. It's fine.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm happy with some bald representation in romance.
Yeah, I was like, I want a bald hero. Why does this guy on the
Yes.
cover have some hair showing? I don't know. Whatever.
I also don't think that the woman on the cover of the book is an accurate representation for Lin either.
No, because I think in the book
They describe her as having
something
a
with her
bob.
hair was different. Yeah, something with her hair was different. I
Yeah.
remember reading something and I was like, wait, this isn't what the heroine on the cover looks like.
Yeah,
Come on,
they
art
specifically
department.
mention her having a bob, and like she does have like some reddish tint to her hair, which you do see in the cover art. But you're right. I think the reason the whole idea of her having a bob and him being bald, which I'm fine with both of those. But I think the reason that it stood out to me was that that's not what they look like on the cover, and the cover was like my first image of who I was picturing in the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But I'm with you on the bald rep. I would love to have more men with it, and I thought it was interesting too that they do call him bald, because I was like, oh, I'm wondering if like he shaves his head or if like he just doesn't grow hair on his head. And I know that in the grand scheme of things, these aren't like the most important questions, but when we talk about that, we want to have like diverse representation, when it comes to not only where people are from, not only what their sexual orientation is, but like what their bodies look like. I am curious because you don't see a lot of bald men in romance novels.
No. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Interesting. But anyway, I wanted to turn it over to you, and I think this will be an interesting chat because we talked a little bit before we started recording, and I, do have a couple of petty notes myself, as per usual, but I will say overall, I enjoyed this, and I think I might have had a different read of this than you guys did. So I would love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so for me, this is my second Hannah Sheik. So I think this is her third romance / true love. But there's a second one in the middle that I have not read yet.
Okay.
But I read her first one, I think like a month ago, and I really enjoyed it. This one, I didn't hate it. I enjoyed it. It's just, I don't know, like I was messaging Aaron about it and I'm like, I don't know what it is about this book. It doesn't feel very romance-ish. And we were having this conversation about like, it almost could have been a heartwarming, just added in a couple more pages or whatever and throw in some side characters. And I'm like, that's very, I think it's very real. And I mean, we read this one very close to reading another one by a Presents author. And like, I was like, well, this this one felt very romance. It's like the lines are just have been kind of blurry with some of these reads recently, where you're having these books that like are in one line, have kind of the makings
like
of
another.
fitting another one. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's weird. I don't know. Aaron, you take it, because I feel like I'm making no sense.
No, I like that.
Well, so this is actually the first romance line that I've actually read. I don't know why I've taken so long to get to this line, but I just don't think I was the reader that this one was meant for. There's nothing wrong with the book. It just didn't catch me for some reason. I thought
fair.
The characters were fine. I thought the there was nothing wrong with the plot and the progression of the story.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I usually fall in love along with the characters in the book, and like
Did you feel a little removed from this one? Because I kind of felt like less of an emotional connection. Like while I did enjoy the characters, I feel like I'm kind of on the same page with you in that I felt I was more detached from them, like looking in through the window, as opposed to like placing yourself like in the scene.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to put it. Usually when you really love a romance novel, like if you had heard and got wind that the couple was having relationship issues a few months later, you'd be like, no, oh my God, what happened? I wouldn't feel that way with this couple. I'd just be like, oh, well, that's too bad.
Like, not surprised.
And I don't mean to be cruel.
Not like too upset about it. Now, I'm curious, because you mentioned this is the first time you've read this particular imprint, which is Harlequin romance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
correct.
so I'm curious, from people who read a lot of category romance, what is the difference, let's say, between Harlequin romance and Harlequin presents? Because Harlequin presents is the other category romance we read earlier during Boobsmas, our read of Snowbound in Her Boss's Bed by Marcella Bell.
Yeah, so these lines, as far as what I can tell, are actually pretty similar.
Okay.
They usually have to do with richer characters, a little more international storytelling or settings, I suppose. But the romance line is generally closed door to very low heat.
Got it.
Presents is going to be like medium to high-ish heat, depending on what your definition of high heat is. I know compared to some KU romances, presents would be considered low heat to some people.
Okay.
But, there's gonna be sex in a presents no matter what, and presents is like it has characters that are just beyond real life. Like it's
the fantasy,
dealing with princes, made up countries. Like it's like a fairy tale set in a contemporary story, and there's just the drama's just dialed up to 11 usually.
Yeah.
Love
we hear
it.
a lot of times, like if we have like a romance author on, and we ask, like, what advice would you give? And a lot of times they'll say, read from both the romance line and the presents line, because they are very similar, but they do have those differences. I mean, I think the heroes in a lot of time, like I do feel like a presents hero could absolutely walk into a romance novel. I don't know. We always just get like the romances are still a little bit more down to earth, real life. Like presents is very much the romance fantasy. It's like he has all the money in the world, but like the one thing he can't have is the girl kind of thing. And it's the Cinderellas, it's the Red Riding Hoods, it's the fairy tale. Whereas romance could still be like, oh, it's a billionaire that just so happens to live on the top floor of the apartment building, So,
yeah.
It's
hate
interesting
it when that happens.
Right. It's interesting because like I now that Dare is closed, romance is like hands down my favorite line, and Aaron reads he loves present. So it's interesting. We have read these two back to back. Like we read the Marcella Bell that you and Becky read, and we were talking a lot. I was like, Aaron, I feel like this presents novel could have been a romance. So for him to tell, he's like, I think it could have been a special edition. I'm like, oh, we have to talk about this.
That's so interesting, though. No, no, that makes perfect sense, though, because it's coming from, the two of you who read category all the time. And this is something we've actually talked about in a few Boobsmas episodes this season, is kind of this, how marketing of a book will like affect how you read it, in that if it's being marketed to you a certain way, like say they're calling it a rom-com or they're calling it a super spicy holiday romance, and then you read it and it doesn't meet that expectation that's been, you know, delivered to you time and time again on social media and by reviewers and by the publisher, it will have an impact usually on how you like or dislike that book. And
Absolutely.
so I can see kind of applying the same principles to the different categories of, oh, this is so interesting. This was marketed, or not even marketed, but it's part of this specific line. I think it might have worked better in this other line for X, Y, and Z reason.
Absolutely. Exactly that. Yep.
Well, I will say I'm with you on like a certain level of detachment from the characters. I will say what I like about this book is that we already talked about it a little bit, but I do not read a lot of romances that take place outside the United States. And when they do, they're usually still very Eurocentric countries. So it's the UK, it is Canada, but I don't read a lot that are set in Africa. And I know that this book doesn't take place predominantly in Africa, but we spend the first couple chapters in Kenya. We then go to Canada, and not only Canada, but Calgary, Canada, which that alone, I'm like, was a surprise.
Yeah.
And I found that so interesting. And to have, you know, two Black leads, to have the hero alone as a Black bisexual man who is a professional event planner was a shock as well. We kind of have a stigma surrounding not only like queer characters, but queer men, and queer men who partner with women. And so there were just a lot of things that I found were really interesting. And like, on the one hand, I was like, oh, I want to know more about this, but that's not part of this specific story. And then on the other hand, I was like, well, this is fine. We don't need to make an entire story about like his bisexual identity. Like, it's not about that. It's about him planning these events, and he hires her. She also does 3D printing, which I was like, well, that's really cool. I don't know if I've seen a character who wants to make like a living out of doing 3D printing. And we're talking about like fancy AF 3D printing, like printing with like gold and silver and these really beautiful things to use for these events that he's planning. So I just all around, it was a lot of surprises left and right, like for the characters. So that was probably what drew me in the most, I think, on this one.
Yeah, I think with romance, I mean, romance is the oldest line. I think romance was actually around like 20 years before Presents. It may have been a little bit longer. But I mean, with some of these, like, it's one of those lines where it has like a dedicated readership, right? So like, while I was reading it, I was like, oh man, I love that his ex was a guy. And like, she didn't just put it in there and then move on. Like, we get multiple, like, I think internal dialogue of like him reflecting back on his ex, which I loved. But I appreciated that they were careful, because it's like, it is a line that's been around for a really long time and has a dedicated readership that is like, you know, very, I'm assuming a specific demographic. And so like, I feel like they have to be careful with that, because that dedicated readership, the subscribers to like the subscription boxes and things are still around. So I feel like this is one of the lines that they're slowly opening the door a little bit more, because I mean, a couple of years ago, you wouldn't have had steam on the page in romance at all, but it is there now. So to even have like a hero that was bisexual, I was like, I love this. I love this so much. It took me by surprise. And like the fact that it took me by surprise, I was like, this shouldn't take me by surprise. But then I had to remember, like, this is literally a Harlequin romance.
No, I know exactly. And I must say that to myself every day when I'm reading romance. It's like, this should not be a surprise. This should not be something that's like an outlier. This should not be like, oh, we have to specifically advertise that it has this kind of relationship, or like this character has this specific identity. It's like, you should just be able to pick up a book and read the book, and if the people fall in love and you root for them, mission accomplished. Like we did what we came to do. And so I'd like for us to get to that point, but I also know that when it comes to publishing, or even, I mean, you can take this beyond just to like media in general, like you do there are a lot of people who tiptoe, who are trying to keep in mind like viewers because they look at it from a business lens, which isn't necessarily wrong. Like that is something I've worked in TV. I know that this is something that people think about is the money. But I do appreciate that while there are some brands who are sticking true to what we've done all the time because it's always worked for us, there are other brands who are, even if it feels a little too slow to us, they are at least taking steps. They are at least moving in the right direction, even if it is at a glacial pace.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it's, you know, I can understand why it wasn't used in the advertising of this book. You know, bisexual identifying people deal with a lot of bullshit in life in general.
Yep.
But to point to it in advertising in a book, you were going to have, this is just me talking here, you were going to have a lot of people just throwing shade at it no matter what happened in the story. As though there would be people coming out of it calling just queer baiting, like, oh, they just winked at it and then it went away. Or, you know, saying, oh, well, okay, they've got a bisexual character, but of course they end up with a woman, criticizing it for that. You know, so there's just, it's almost like you can't win with having bisexual characters in romance these days.
And I do think there is an extra stigma attached to queer men in romance,
absolutely.
like when they're not with other men. And then to add in the fact that he is also a Black man, which I think is an even higher level of stigma that's attached to queer characters or queer people in general. So, you know, I find that really interesting. And I do appreciate, I'll say it, I hate that his name is Karl. I think it's a terrible name in general. And to spell it with a K
Karl
just makes me very angry. But irrationally angry. However, you know what? If that's the biggest judgment I'm going to make, like, okay, I do really appreciate, though, that level of representation. And so it's something that, at least from this reader, from me, it makes me want to read more category romance, because I am somebody who has thought for a long time that, much like maybe a very popular television network that produces a lot of Christmas content, you're just going to get the same thing. You're just going to get the same thing over and over again, and it's not going to change. And to read something like this, that kind of dispels that notion for me.
Yeah. I feel like they're getting better. They're getting better for sure.
I will say what drove me crazy was that they both clearly have some baggage when it comes to like their families for varying reasons, but Karl's family is whew, and so there were just a lot of moments of like, I call it kind of like the surly Bruce Wayne character type, where he just kind of like is brooding in a corner and doesn't want to talk about his feelings, and she wants to help address some problems with him, but I don't want to talk about it. Like, it's just, there were a lot of moments like that. And then on the flip side, there were a couple times where I'm thinking of one in particular where she encourages him to speak with his parents. And it's not like they have a fight. It's not like he, you know, yells at her, nothing like that. He just is kind of like, okay, great, I don't want to talk about it. And then he leaves. And she goes to his great aunt, godmother. That's who she is. She goes to his godmother and is like, he hates me. He never wants to see me again. And I just was like, what is going on? I don't know where this is coming from. Like, this feels a little uncalled for the fact that he walked away from a conversation he didn't want to have, for you to immediately think that he hates you and never wants to see you again.
Yeah. Honestly, you said I think that was my thing. I think the past couple of reads that I had read prior to picking this up, it was like just this family drama. And I honestly feel like this book was probably doomed for me for the beginning, because I was like not really in the mood for that. At the time, you know, it's like, I don't know, like so many, like, you know, sometimes you'll pick up the romances and, you know, the child's an orphan or whatever. And I'm like, thank God, like I don't have to deal with like the mom who's a bitch, like I don't want to hear that shit all the time. Like I like to see, obviously, like, and you've written a book now, Kelly, and so you get it. But like,
I do know
so much of who we've become is from like our parents and stuff. Like, I totally get it. But just like, I feel like in presents and romance in a lot of books, it's like the family's just awful, and like sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to fucking deal with that right now. I just don't want it. Or I want to see it done differently. Like when we read Rowan's book, The Holiday Trap, some months ago, the character's parents were still together and they were like too loving, and she explored how like that affects kids when your parents are like too loving and don't want you to leave the house and they want you to stay around.
That's actually something I'm working on in a story I'm ghostwriting right now.
I love that so much. I was like, thank you for something refreshing. Like we don't see that often. Like usually it's just everybody's awful. And I'm like, I don't want this right now.
It's like the Disney stepmother effect, where somebody is either dead or divorced or in a loveless marriage. I'm just like, look, I know the rates of like marriage and divorce aren't stellar, but like, I don't know. Like some people do stay together and some people have good childhoods. Like, and some people have good relationships with their parents, or maybe like you said, it's not necessarily good or bad. It's just different. Like some are a little more codependent. Some are maybe a little too close. Like these are just, I talk about it all the time. I want to just see different kinds of relationships. I don't care if they're good, bad, healthy, unhealthy. Like, I just want something different. Not everybody has to be a product of divorce or a dead mom. Like, I mean, and that's not to say that those aren't stories that people have.
That's very real, but geez, yeah.
It's wild.
I don't know, Aaron, what did you think? What did you have? What were you going to say?
Okay, so I'm actually a bit in Karl's corner here, even though every time I hear that name, I just think of the character from Aqua Teen Hunger Force, which is not a good visual image.
Did he also spell it with a K?
No, I don't believe so. But anyway, that whole conflict. I can empathize with it because I've seen it before. I've seen the partner that had a fine childhood literally just not being able to conceptualize a bad childhood and a bad family dynamic and trying to mediate the reunion or whatever that they feel needs to happen when it's just not meant to be, and no contact is good. Sometimes it is the best thing sometimes for some families.
Yeah. I mean, how many romances have you read over the years where you read it and you're like, and I know, because especially around when the holidays come around, we do see a lot of holiday romance that usually has some sort of family element. And usually it's one of two things. It's either a super toxic family that hasn't gotten along in years for X, Y, and Z reasons, and by the end of the book, they make up and they're a family again. Or it's the family that does all the activities together during the holidays. They do all their bonding things. They love each other in spite of like the fact that they're all weird in their own ways. It's okay for them to not make up. Like, it's okay for them to not have a relationship with their family members. I think that was actually one of the things that I liked about You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince, is that by the end of the book, he kind of lays it out to his family where he's like, look, I'm not ready to forgive you for like all the shit that you've put me through. Like, these are the things I'm gonna need. And we can address these things together, but like you're gonna have to meet these needs in order for us to have a relationship. And that's kind of the conclusion of the family conflict in that story. Like there isn't a let's wrap it up and put a bow on it moment. It's just, I want us to have a relationship moving forward, but you're going to have to work with me in order to make that happen. And I love that. That's where they leave it.
And shout out to that author, because I'm pretty sure John Jacobson, the editor from Desire, said that author is going to be writing for the new Harlequin line in 2024. So I can't wait.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, no, I hope that's it's Timothy Timothy Janofsky was the author of You're a Mean One, Matthew Prince. It's also our second day of Boobsmas episode if people want to go back and listen to it. But yeah, that was a fun one for sure. But no, you're right. It's okay to like let the family go sometimes if they're impacting your health and well-being.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that goes to show something about our generation, because like I've had that same conversation with family members, like from my mom on up. I'm like, we have no problem with being like, it took a lot of therapy for me, but a therapist once upon a time told me, like, just because it's your mother or whoever does not give anybody the reason to like treat you like shit, and you have to deal with it.
Set it all aside because they're your family.
Exactly.
No,
and I took that to heart. I'm like, you are so right. So yes, I think our generation is like, okay, fuck that. I don't care who you are. we can just call it quits right here.
Yeah. If there are toxic things in my life, I'm cutting them out. And that doesn't matter if it's a thing or a person. If it's not good for me, it's not good for anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did you both know that the saying "blood is thicker than water" is not the original saying? That the original saying, the full thing, is the blood of a friend is thicker than the water of the womb.
Oh my God. That like puts it in completely different context.
Yeah, completely like 180 of what it's mostly used for.
That's literally the opposite meaning of what
it is.
Blood is thicker than water has in our... That is ridiculous.
Oh my gosh. So many of us were today years old when we learned that. Learned the meaning.
It's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, I know it's probably funny for us to be talking about the 12 days of Boobsmas and holiday romance and festivities and be like, I wish he was an orphan. I wish he cut his family off because they're like bad for him. But this is a reality too, is like, especially in the year 2022, when we have so much like societal and political divide in our country, just our country alone. It's not good. It's not good for you, and it's not good for the people around you to like keep these toxic people, things, places like in your world. Most of us believe you get one life. And so if you got to pack it in with the things that are good, that work for you. And if you're just hanging on to the bad things, it's not good for yourself. It's not good for the people around you. Like it's affecting so many other people other than you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays.
Holy shit.
Happy Kwanzaa. And now I will say, if I do have another complaint, it's the fact that, but this might also be a little bit of my own ignorance, is that I do wish there was more Kwanzaa, but also I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what like more Kwanzaa looks like. And they even say in the synopsis that it's like a Kwanzaa set romance. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I'm like, oh great, it's going to be a Kwanzaa romance. We're going to give the same attention to Kwanzaa that we normally give to Christmas in like a Christmas romance. But I don't think Kwanzaa necessarily has the same celebrations and activities and festivities that Christmas does. And so I think it's a little bit of my own ignorance of like not knowing enough about Kwanzaa to know that like if I was envisioning a Kwanzaa romance, what would that look like? Like I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, I don't feel like I learned anything new about Kwanzaa. And I knew almost nothing.
Yeah. I don't
so we're
know
we're still at that level.
I don't know if I just don't know how she would have done it with the page count.
Right.
You know,
right.
I've seen
it's not Hannah's job to tell us, what Kwanzaa is.
Right. Yeah, right. I mean, they're so like character driven. So it's so much of it is about Lin and Karl. But I mean, if you're going to tell us it's like a Kwanzaa themed book, like I went into it hoping to get some Kwanzaa. I mean, we have seen it before. She would have had to taken something out. And I don't know what that would have been.
Well, and you do have the opportunity to include it because Lin isn't familiar with Kwanzaa. So like you have that fish out of water element where it's like it would feel somewhat natural for him to be kind of walking her through like what Kwanzaa is because she doesn't know. And so that's like, I was like, oh, there is the opportunity to include
Yes.
it, because otherwise you're totally right. This is something Becky and I have talked about a lot when it comes to Hanukkah romance, is the amount of Hanukkah romances that include this like long-winded history about what Hanukkah is and means. And she's like, I don't know any Jewish person that would talk to another Jewish person about the meaning of Hanukkah. Like we've all been fed what Hanukkah is since we were like 2 and got our first dreidel. And so it's just like, it would make sense because of that outsider aspect to explain a little bit more. But at the same time, I'm kind of thinking about the movie Die Hard, where I'm like, okay, we argue about if Die Hard is a Christmas movie every year. I look forward to it. It's my favorite argument to have, along with Starbucks red cup designs for the holidays. Like, 2 favorite holiday arguments. Is it a Christmas movie? To me, I watch it at Christmas. However, you can take Christmas out of the movie and the movie will still exist. It doesn't need Christmas to be Die Hard. And that's kind of how I felt about this book, where I'm like, could this have just been a book about her going to live and work in Canada with this man and them falling in love while they're working together and planning events? Does it need to have the holidays? Does it need to have Kwanzaa in order to exist? And I don't think it does, but that's just sort of where my mind's at, is I wonder why we went with Kwanzaa.
I feel like you could have taken the Kwanzaa pieces out of it and the book would have still been the exact same. I do feel like you mentioned opportunity. I feel like it was kind of a missed opportunity to be honest, like in the romance line, now that Therese Bahari is no longer isn't writing for it at the moment. Hopefully she comes back. But Hannah Sheikh, at this moment, is the only Black writer writing for romance. I know that there is an author that won one of those, like, So You Think You Can Write type competitions or whatever it's called, but we haven't seen the book from her yet. So she is literally the only Black writer writing for romance true love at the moment. And so I don't want to put like a bunch of pressure on her, but I do feel like if you're going to tell me like it's a Kwanzaa-themed book, I want to see Kwanzaa in it. If I pick up a Christmas book, if a romance is pitched to me and they're like, hey, there's this Christmas rom-com, I expect some Christmas. Like, that affects like my reading experience and rating of the book if I pick up a Christmas book and there's nothing really Christmassy about it, because I came to it for a specific thing. And obviously, like, I came to this because, okay, one of the only authors of color writing for this line. It's Kwanzaa themed. Like, oh, this is something different. I want to read this. But it was really small. So it did feel like a real missed opportunity to do something that hasn't been done thus far in the line, I feel like.
I'm glad that we read this nonetheless. If nothing else, like, just for all of the things we've already mentioned, like about the characters and where they come from and the different representations that we don't normally get to see. But I was very excited to read my first Kwanzaa set romance during the 12 Days of Boobsmas, and it was a good start. It was a good start as far as Kwanzaa set romance goes. I would like to see more in the future, just to be able to see what a romance that centers around Kwanzaa might look like, as opposed to one that just sort of has it in the background. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's like, I am curious to read more, like, and I think that's just putting it out there. I want there to be more.
Yeah, I feel like if this was a single title, like if she would have had 150 more pages, I feel like this book would have been great. I mean, it was good. It's an enjoyable book, but like, this is one that personally I wish could have been a little bit longer. Because like you said, like, I would have loved to have learned more about Kwanzaa through the eyes of someone actually from Africa coming to North America, doing a job centered around the holidays and like getting to, I want to know what that experience is like. Like, we know it from our perspective, but like, give it to me from the perspective of someone actually from Africa coming over here and learning about it, you know? And it is like a holiday celebrating African tradition, but in North America. So like, what does that look like for her?
Is she like, oh, this is so weird, like, we don't do this in Kenya? Like, you know, or is it like, oh, these are some things that I'd love to know more about. Like, that I'm with you on that. Well, seeing as this book doesn't exactly have open door sex scenes, I think we can skip over the part where we would share a sexcerpt. There are a few scenes that I think we know that they actually have sex. It's not a Hallmark world. Like, they actually do have sex in this book, but it is off the page. We do get like a wandering hand over his boxer briefs,
Yes.
but not a lot more than that. So I think we can skip over the sexcerpt portion of the episode and go straight to our ratings, which you both know we rate for heart, humor, and heat on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the very best that it could possibly be for you. And we've added an extra rating, and that is holidays, just for these Boobsmas episodes. So holiday rating as well. So let's start with heart. What do we think?
I would give it a 7 on the heart scale.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
think that was the strongest part of this book.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. I'll go with a 7.
Especially if you like take into account like heart, humor, heat, holiday. I'm like, okay, well, it's not the humor. It's not the heat. There are holidays, but yeah, heart is definitely, I feel like on this particular scale, going to be the highest. So I was probably between a 6 and a 7. I do appreciate like the good family ties that they have, and I actually really liked their work environment. I was like, ooh, I would love to know more about like the characters that like work with them as well. So I don't know if that's something that's planned for future books or not, but maybe. How about humor?
Honestly, I'd have to give it a 1 star. I
Or
really
a
don't think
not applicable.
Yes, and not applicable.
And yeah, not applicable, which is fine. Which that's absolutely fine. Like,
Yeah.
not every romance needs humor.
Though I do love humor.
No, and there's just yeah, me too. I mean, there's so much like family angst in this one that it's like, it's clear that that's not a focus. You know, I mean, we understand that it's not meant to be a rom-com, and that's perfectly fine. Heat. Obviously people know who listen to Boobies and Newbies that I will give it at least a 5 if it's an open door. Like, if there's at least one open door scene, we work our way up from 5. Now, at this one, we have a kind of fade to black sex scene. We have some kisses. They wake up the next morning and she has, her hand like inching towards his boxers, and then he's like, nah. And so it's not quite there. So I think I'm going to give it a 3.
Yeah, I'd go with a 3 as well, because from Lynn's perspective, the sex was pretty hot, but we just have to trust her on that.
There were some swoon-worthy moments. Like, there were some moments that she kind of like lets you kind of use your imagination on what happens next. So I think, totally fade to black on all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely 3. Definitely.
Yeah, which again is no problem.
Right. Also, can I say how much I love that she's the one to ask if she can kiss him
If she
the
can
first
kiss
time?
him, yeah, that was adorable. I'm sorry.
I loved that because,
Me
first of
too.
all, I do love when characters ask to kiss other characters. Like, that's something that I find extremely swoon-worthy for like that first kiss moment. But I honestly don't know if I've ever read a romance where it's been the female character asking the male character if she can kiss him. I don't think I've ever read that.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I loved it.
I don't think so.
And that's wild. This is coming from like 3 romance readers who have been reading romance for a while. Like, the fact that like I can't think of a single book where that's been, and obviously we haven't read all the books, but I can't think of one that I've read, in the past decade.
Yeah, that was such a good moment because it was like clearly a moment set up for them to kiss, but he's like super hesitant. And I was just like, when she asked him, I was like, thank God, girl.
Yes.
He clearly wasn't going to ask or make a move.
Like, to me, hottest part of the book. And I know it's not even meant to be like a super hot moment, but damn, love to see it. And then last but not least, well, yeah, let's talk about the holidays. Out of 10, what do we think?
I'd give it a 2, I guess.
Ooh.
It's there.
2.5 for, the few times it's mentioned. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, I am torn on this one. I will say it does cover a good amount of time too. Like, and this is actually one of the things that I think kind of worked against there being holiday opportunities is at one point we jump from there's like a chapter that begins with 5 weeks later, and it basically like skips over everything between Thanksgiving and Christmas. And that to me, I was like, ooh, we're skipping like a key moment like during the holiday season. I feel like there was opportunity for there to be more holidays, like not even just Kwanzaa, but just like more of like what's going on at that time of year. I might be generous and give it a 3.
That's fine. We love the 3.
Yeah.
But I think we're all in agreement that there were some great ideas. There were some great characters. We just wanted more. We just wanted more story, more holidays, more time with them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe the next one. So, yeah, I'm just going to manifest that there'll be more Kwanzaa romance for us to read in 2023. Because like I said, this was a first for me. And I, for one, would love to see there be more.
Yes, if y'all are listening and
Yeah.
you know of one, like hit us up, let us know. I mean, I'm sure down in KU somewhere there has to be some. So let us know.
Yeah, and there's probably, I mean, if it's in KU, there's probably like a monster or an alien involved too.
Yes.
Of course. Yeah, almost by necessity. I just want to add, I'm looking forward to reading more Hannah Shake still.
Mm-hmm.
I know I've heard from many reputable sources that she writes some damn good romance books. So this one just wasn't for me, but I am still looking forward to reading more of her stuff.
Yeah.
Me too. Well, until then, I am, again, so thankful to have both of you here, not only just to hang out and chat, but to celebrate the final day of Boobsmas with me. It's amazing how quick the month of December goes by when you're pumping out Boobsmas episodes left and right, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I love it. So it's busy, but fun. It's a great way to count down to Christmas, which I really appreciate. And, you know, by the time this episode airs, I'll be home with my family. So I'm really looking forward to that. Just looking forward to another year of podcasting in the future. So thank you to both Bree and Aaron, but also thanks to everybody for just listening and supporting the podcast thus far.
Thank you for having
Happy
us, and
Boobsmas,
thank you for
everyone.
doing this. Yeah, happy Boobsmas,
Happy
everybody.
Boobsmas, everybody. And with that, there's nothing else for us to say except on the 12th day of Boobsmas, my lover gave to me 12 crotchless panties.
Happy Boobsmas, everybody. Happy Boobsmas.
Happy Boobsmas.
Nailed it.
On the 12th day of Boobsmas, my lover gave to me 12 crotchless panties, 11 bodice rippers, 10 tubes of lube, 9 naughty spankings, 8 rock hard up, 7 minutes in heaven, 6 billionaires, 5 penis, 3 5 penis, 4 dukes of fucking, 3 butt plugs, 2 nipple clips, and a hot hookup underneath the tree. And a hot hookup underneath the tree. Merry Boobsmas, everybody. Ho, ho, ho.